So, hey everyone, welcome to the Not a Lonely Coffee Break podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Meaghan. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer.
So, Meaghan, I feel like I need to update our listeners because have been aware of this going on behind the scenes, but I don't think all of our listeners know. So, I have been getting ready to move out of my house. My wife and I have been packing, going through stuff. We're not moving out permanently or anything. Joys of home ownership. We have to get our foundation done.
Ugh, yeah.
It's like welcome to Texas where you get your foundation done and then you just have to do it again.
Because everything's moving and we're dry and
I
wet and
know.
wet and dry.
I know. So, no, we have been putting it off and putting it off, and we finally said we have to do this. So, we are getting our foundation done, but we have to move all the way out of our house so that they can do what they need to do. And so, yeah, we have been like packing and trying to make sure all of our furniture and all of our stuff will fit in a storage unit.
So you're moving but not moving.
We're moving but not moving. And it's not fun at all. But I'm finding some stuff that I honestly forgot that we had. But I've also realized that we are probably, I don't know if this is a real thing, but I think it is. So, we're probably like low key hoarders. We just have so much stuff and it's overwhelming. And so I'm also trying to declutter our nonsense so it feels a little less hoardery.
You
Is that a
know,
word? It's a word.
yeah, it is now a word. I feel like a lot of people maybe go through this. I would be super surprised if there's someone that isn't like this. But you always think I'm going to use this at some point and I don't want to spend money on this again.
Mm-hmm.
So so for me, um I love wine. Okay, I do.
I
It's my vice.
mean, wine.
It's delicious.
It's yummy.
And so I don't know what this started. It's because I just don't want to throw it away. It's such a waste. But the wine bottles, I've been keeping them, and now I have like 2 boxes full of empty wine bottles, because I keep telling myself I'm going to use them to make a craft, sell them for triple the price.
If you and I were together, which we are not, I would throw those away.
But I'm gonna make money off of them, okay?
How long have you had them, Meaghan? How long have they been sitting in the 2 boxes empty?
I mean, at least since the beginning of 2024, because it was kind of a thing for 2024.
Okay.
But I drink a lot of wine.
If you told me that they'd been sitting in there since like 2018, I'd be like, no, trash.
No,
trash, recycle them.
I constantly think about all those wasted wine bottles I could have made money off of.
Maybe you just need to get on Pinterest and see what can I make with wine bottles.
Well, the next thing you know, I'm going to be at the Dallas Museum of Modern Art and be making millions. Okay? Someone buy my wine bottle, my wine bottle art.
You have to make it first, Meaghan.
Dang it. I need a commission. Someone commission me.
Collect all the stuff.
Okay.
Step 2, use it.
Commission. Step 3, be a millionaire.
But no, I think that happens a lot too, because I think one thing I've also discovered is like random stuff that at one time one of us was like passionate about, and now we're kind of like over it. So like you kind of go through phases in life, but it's almost like I don't want to get rid of that. Maybe because it costs so much money or whatever. So it's like trying to figure out, is there still space for this? I need like those, what's that show? I need that show, The Home Edit. I need them to just come and help us edit our house.
That sounds great.
They have a way of getting people to downsize stuff, even when they're like sentimentally attached to it.
Yeah. It's like when you're sentimental about that one t-shirt you don't fit in anymore, but you're like,
Oh my gosh,
damn
yes.
it, that one
I know.
t-shirt.
And you somehow convince yourself that yes, you will fit into it
I
again.
will one day.
Because when you were in second grade, it was your favorite shirt.
But the Hello Kitty, I can't let go.
So when I was in junior high, I played sports and we had these t-shirts that we wore and they were like our traveling game day shirts.
Right.
And I kept mine like all these years.
Oh.
And I just recently got rid of it probably last year, but it had holes in it. It had paint all over it. Housework shirt. But yeah, I finally got rid of it and it was hard because I was like sentimentally attached to it.
I mean, that's all about the work-life balance, right? There's so many projects we'll start at work and
Mm-hmm.
finish them and be awesome
Yes.
at. But what about these projects at home?
Yeah, a
That's the real
lot.
question.
Let us know what your project is that maybe you've been sitting on and you are trying to find the motivation to do that project. Maybe you too have 2 boxes of wine bottles,
Empty.
empty wine bottles,
They're not vintage in any way.
not
They are
vintage,
empty.
not vintage. They're from the year 2024.
Yeah.
Fun, fun, fun. No, all of this housework though, it has been keeping my mind busy. So I do appreciate that. Like it's been keeping me from doom scrolling.
Ugh,
Because Meaghan, I don't know about you, but like I feel like I have whiplash from everything that's going on.
yeah.
It's like one day it's this, the next day it's something else. And it's it's like yes, this is real life, but like it doesn't feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when am I going to wake up from this absurd dream that I'm having?
Nightmare. Yeah. It's it's ongoing, relentless. I would say some of the stuff that I've been doing I mean, work is obviously something I do to bury myself away, but I've been doing a lot of just tracking, keeping up with organizations that do a lot of
Mhm.
the good work of paying attention, doing the advocacy, the lobbying, the legislative work to track everything, because it is definitely something we need to keep an eye out for, right? It's like this fear of things are just getting out of control. But what do we do now? I'm going to go ahead and give an organization a shout out. One I've been following in particular is Trans Texas. They have a really good build tracker that they've gotten a lot of the bills that have been presented and they categorize them. They do a summary because if you look at these bills, I mean, it's a lot of jargon.
Mhm.
If you read them as they're written, is they refer to a lot of things that are already in place, statutes, titles, whatnot.
Right.
So I've been really thankful for them because they post a lot of stuff. They have that bill tracker, and then they also just keep everyone updated with their trainings and so forth.
Mhm. So, and they update it daily, I guess, with different things?
I'm not sure if they update it
Mhm.
daily. It looks like this was recently updated in the last few days from the day I'm looking at it.
Okay.
So it is a good updated bill tracker. And they're following specifically harmful bills.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So especially in Texas, there's a lot of them that are the big thing is that to know that these bills, they say that 75 bills have been specifically targeting trans
Mhm.
individuals or in
Mhm.
LGBTQ.
Right.
Um, but know that a lot of these bills they're filed multiple times, so it's the same bill over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
do that because you have to read it, right? You got to file it, and then it's got to be read, and then it's got to go sit for a little while, and then it's got to be read again, and then everybody's got to vote on it.
I mean,
And
that's
then,
how a bill is supposed to work, though.
yeah.
If we
So
go
it's,
back if we go back to our little Schoolhouse Rock
yeah,
days.
I'm just a bill. That was, Schoolhouse Rock, they did a lot for me, okay?
They're fantastic. I love them. Shout out
Yes.
Schoolhouse Rock.
So know that a lot of these bills are filed a lot so that they can have a chance of being passed, right?
Right. Well, and then I know sometimes too, like it'll be filed and then that is the opportunity for like other people to kind of read it, and at least the way it's hopefully done is then people provide input like,
Mm-hmm.
we like this part of the bill, but we would like to see this changed in
Right,
the
the
bill. And
amendments.
so the idea is that you're tweaking it and then it's refiled so that it has maybe more support. But what we're seeing now is not many of those tweaks are actually happening. They're just refiling
Same thing over
the
and
same
over
thing over
in
and over
hopes
again.
that it would pass.
Yeah.
That's why it's super important to be following these things, because once they get on the floor to be
Mhm.
voted, they get pushed to committee. When they're in committee is probably one of the most important times to advocate, because if it gets past the committee, it gets pushed back onto the floor for another
Mhm.
vote, and that's when it can be passed.
Right. Mhm. And
Really
we did
paying
we
attention.
did yeah, and we did see in the last Texas legislature, we did see um a ridiculous amount of bills filed. And at the end of it all, I think only 4 actually passed. Um they were terrible bills, of course. We didn't want to see them pass, but the system, at least last legislation, the system did work. Enough people were speaking out, were talking to the committees, calling the representatives, letting them know we are not in support of these bills. And so they were able to kill a good amount of them.
Right. I would say, when I was kind of sifting through these and looking and trying to see, okay, which ones really um, inhibit the workplace, right? Safety
Mm-hmm.
and discrimination and so forth, because we all know that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is
Yeah.
not to put everybody on a pedestal, it's to attack implicit bias, right? It's
Right.
at various levels. But there is one bill that really came up to mind. It's HB 2548. One that is definitely, out of the ones I was reading, it's one that is the most specific as far as what is going to be taught in higher education in educational settings, but then also specific to race and LGBTQ people.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of wild. I mean, it's basically telling us that classes cannot teach contemporary American society on the topic of critical theory,
Yeah,
right? So they
the critical
critical
race
race
theory.
theory, which was a big buzzword for a long time, but it lines it out. Systemic racism, microaggressions, which is towards LGBTQ folks, and
Mm.
you know,
And I think,
race. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and microaggressions I think are common in the
Yeah.
workplace, like so common.
So being able to recognize those things is very important, right? Especially in
Mm-hmm.
higher education. You're in higher education, you're paying for this education. So I feel that, if it's a class that you want to take, that you're purposefully taking, I don't see why you
Right.
can't be taught
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific about the things that are often talked about for marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm.
Bills are intentionally vague, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
intentionally vague because once they're passed, they go to the agency and then you make the rules and so forth. But with this one
Yeah.
being so specific, it is incredibly dangerous
Mm-hmm.
because there's not a lot of leeway on there.
Right. No, and we're seeing a lot, not just in Texas, just kind of across the board. We are seeing a lot of push in legislation, like for bills like that intentionally sort of remove the ability to talk about research, mention a lot of these things. I have a lot of former professors, a lot of friends who are in the research space, and they are at risk of not being funded anymore because their research is focusing on marginalized communities or racism within certain communities or discrimination. And because they're not allowed to use any of those words, and honestly, we're also seeing censorship of a lot of that data, then they're kind of like, do I have a job? Am I gonna be able to do this anymore? And if I am, how am I gonna do it? What does that look like moving forward? So it's definitely tough, and I think, it doesn't just open the door for people to be discriminated against. It's also gonna impact so many professions at large and the work that they do and have been doing. So yeah, it'll definitely be interesting.
Right. Especially for the social work people. I mean, the purpose, I mean, in my mind, is that social work is to help improve the community, right? And being knowledgeable of
Mhm.
what the community is facing, or different groups and diversities, and the intersectionality of people who are facing different things, whether it's based on race, gender
Mhm.
identity, sexual orientation, or even their economic position. Like, in
Mhm.
order for us to serve those people efficiently and effectively, we need to have this information. You
Mhm.
can't, I mean, it's just going blind. And so it's just,
I've been in a lot of conversations lately and people are like, "Well, I just don't understand, like just stay out of politics." Social work is political. My profession started because of politics.
mhm,
There was a need to address marginalized communities, and so people stepped up. And it did initially, like back in the day, it did initially kind of start out as like socialite philanthropy projects, but it evolved into so much more because as they were diving into these philanthropy projects, they were discovering people are being oppressed.
mhm,
People don't have access to the things that they need. We need someone who can help them get that. And so that's kind of where it evolved, and it's in our mission statement that like our job is to work with vulnerable, marginalized, oppressed communities. And so if we aren't allowed to talk about it, if we aren't allowed to research it, if you hide that data from us, how are we going to be able to effectively do our job?
right.
If you take away funding for the programs
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah, I
support
mean,
all of this. So it's a mess, Meaghan. It's a mess.
it's a mess. And, you know, I think the true work is, we're taking a couple steps backwards, but it's just to push to have those steps back, right?
Mhm.
And, we're seeing it in the military. You know, it's basically back to the don't ask, don't tell era. For trans
Mhm.
people, it's like they don't, they don't want you in there, which is wild to me.
Mhm.
If someone is volunteering to be a part of something,
Let them.
if
If let them.
they want to be a part
If
of your a force, then
right.
it's not like you have people lining up to go back there. It's just, it's wild. So, um, be on the
No, so
lookout.
yeah, be on the lookout, be vigilant. A lot of stuff right now, right? We're seeing a heavy focus on DEI. There's a lot of misinformation out there about DEI. This is just going to make sure that the most qualified people get the jobs, but DEI is so much more um, than that. I do encourage you to go down that rabbit hole so that you are informed about it. Because we're seeing a lot of things happening in the name of removing DEI.
Mhm. A lot of people losing their jobs.
A lot of people losing their jobs. People are specifically being targeted if they're connected to anything deemed as DEI. I did call my representative, my
Good.
senator. Not that
Good.
not that I received any
Well, if anything, we should get
helpful
at least
information.
20 people to do it on the same day, and that might make some sense. I mean, a lot of people think that making the phone call doesn't matter, making the email or the letter doesn't matter. But if we were to do it all in the same day,
Mhm.
for saying the same specific language, it can turn heads. But I think the
Mhm.
problem is that there's not enough people making that. There's a lot of apathy. There's a lot of voter apathy. There's
Right.
People are just done. I mean, they're checked out. They don't
Well,
want to.
and I think I think one of the goals in all of this sort of every day something new happens. I think it's designed to kind of knock out some of our hope
Mm-hmm.
and trust in the process a little bit. And like that's sometimes where I fall is like, what's the point? Right?
Yeah.
My senator is Republican. They don't give two craps about me.
Well, it's easy to
They
get
have an agenda.
exhausted. Well, it's easy to get
So,
exhausted if you're working like a not even a 9 to 5, an 8 to 6 job, um,
right.
paying your bills, uh, in debt, working
Hmm.
paycheck to paycheck. It's like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna get exhausted.
Yeah. But there is, because you know me, I'm big on the social media.
Yeah. Tell me, give me updates.
So I do find myself often fact checking a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing because, yeah, if it's on TikTok, please fact check it. It's a great there's a lot of great information I have learned about through there, but it is important to make sure the information that some of these individuals are saying is in fact a fact. But
Right.
one resource that I learned about actually, as people are kind of making content about like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? So there's this app that you can download. It's called Five Calls, and it also kind of tracks a lot of what's happening, a lot of what's going on, and kind of provides some general information about what's going on. And then it also you easily because when you sign up, you put in kind of like where you're at, and it will tell you who your representatives are and their contact information. And then it gives you a script that you can call and just read that script to
Right.
them, right?
Hmm.
So if there's a certain bill or a certain piece of legislation or something that you're concerned about, this app kind of helps you um, find some of those words because making a call is hard,
Hmm.
especially if you're like, I don't really know what to say to get
I don't
their
even.
attention.
I don't even like calling to make a doctor's appointment.
Right. So it can be, and it's nerve wracking,
Yeah.
right? You know, you're not talking directly to that person most of the time. You're talking to one of their aides, secretaries,
Oh
whatever,
yeah, absolutely.
and they're trying to like rush you. So it's hard. So this app kind of helps you at least have something in front of you that you can kind of follow along and read your little script for whatever it is. And then, a lot of the statistics that people are sharing and discussing says that people who make phone calls, it carries more weight than if you go online and fill out the little contact form. That
Hmm.
generally those just get deleted. Like they don't because they just
They're
get
not
so many
tallying
of
them.
them
Yeah.
that they aren't really tracking them. But a phone call, they at least are compiling like, okay, we received 15 calls about this particular topic. And sort of historical data, it says that people who are more right leaning or Republicans tend to call at higher percentage
How
than
interesting.
people who are more left leaning or Democrat.
Is the
So
correlation our anxiety? I
are
need
we
to do
nervous?
some research.
Is
Can we
there
do?
so that's been some interesting sort of rabbit hole findings that I've kind of gone down, and someone will share something and then I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. Is it true?" And then I look it up and yes, does it does show that correlation.
Wow.
So, but yeah, the app is called Five Calls. So yeah, and it just gives you information about making calls. So if that's something that you are maybe feeling nervous about is making a call, definitely maybe explore that app or see if there's another resource out there. I'm a big fan of someone giving me a template
Yes.
of what to say. And then, yeah, sometimes I can modify it based on my own personal experience or whatever, but it at least gives me something to start with. And I think it does make me feel a little bit better in the advocacy part of all of this because we have to make sure our voices aren't silenced.
Right. At the end of the day, I mean, you don't know this person. They don't know you. Their only job is to take your information, to make sure they're recording what you say And so really
Mhm.
there's not a lot to be anxious about other than making the direct phone call. But
Speaking to someone.
speaking to someone, you're like, ew, my voice.
Talking out loud.
I'm just gonna put my earplugs in and I can't hear myself saying anything, but this is happening.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, gain the courage, do it. It is very much needed. Very much needed. And it
So,
only takes practice.
yeah. I can tell you one area that I don't foresee this advocacy approach working very well on is with the Dallas Mavericks.
And
You know, we Megan and I we started to talk about it in the last episode and we just were not ready for it. Our hearts were not ready for it yet. It was too fresh
mostly
for us.
shock. Like, what are the 5 stages of grief?
So yeah, we're now a little bit further into our feelings of grief about the Luca trade. But Megan, have
What happened?
you seen that, cuz initially when news broke, it was like out of left field. No one saw it coming. This was shocking. It still is very shocking. But have you seen that there is now a DFW coffee shop who's like front and center of this conversation because the trade happened in their coffee shop?
What? That's
Yes.
wild. I
My
would
gosh.
charge them so much money for making that happen there.
Oh my gosh, yes. So there is a local coffee shop. I'm not going to name drop them because they had zero control in this, you guys.
It's not
They
their fault.
It's
They're
not
just
their
a business.
fault. It's not their fault. But yeah, so the general manager of the Mavericks and the general manager of the Lakers were meeting in person at this coffee shop. And it was one of those things
In
where now
person?
in person.
Good lord. Okay, like that's a
And
$25,000 cup of coffee.
I know, right?
I'm like, your prices
And
just went up.
some there have been some reports of like some because I think it's one of those things where like the employees aren't really allowed to talk about it too much. But some people have kind of said like, yeah, we knew this was happening, but like this is our business. Like
We can't say anything.
like
It's like when you're at the bar or like you're waiting at a wet restaurant,
mhm,
like waiting as far if you're a waiter, waitress, and then or bartender. You hear
and you
so
hear some
many things. You
yes.
hear, you see, and you're just like, okay, okay.
So yeah, apparently the people who were working at the coffee shop, they knew what was going down. They may not have known all the details, but they knew something big was going down.
Big oof.
And all they could do was serve coffee and keep checking like, "Are you okay?" "I'm not."
Is there anything else I can do for you? That is wild stuff in person. I mean, I'm glad.
In
Okay,
person.
I'm glad it was in person.
And
Okay,
so
something
they
so.
shook hands on it.
Ooh. B, don't touch each
Yes.
other.
They shook
C.
hands on it.
C, stop what you're doing. Wild. That is wild
So
stuff.
wild. So wild. Yeah. And then also Luca made his official Lakers debut, and every single person in attendance at that game got a shirt with Luca's number and name on it. That was purple and gold, Lakers
Humbug.
colors.
Humbug.
But apparently his Laker jersey is the number one selling
Oh,
jersey of the
really?
year. He was already a high up jersey, but he skyrocketed in players when the trade went through. Because also
Of
now the
course.
Mavericks fans
Oh, no,
have
they're the Lakers fans.
now we're Lakers fans. No,
Yeah.
it's very hard to cheer for our Dallas teams right now.
I'm very much I watch, I'm not a big sportsy person, but I do a lot of
Sportsy. Sportsy.
sportsy wortsy. I didn't play sports in school, okay, y'all. Like, I was the last person being chosen on the kickball team. I used to regret that, but now I don't. I've accepted it. So I watch F1 racing, and my favorite racer, Lewis Hamilton, has switched from Mercedes after like a decade and going to Ferrari.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do we like it? Do
I
we
mean,
not like it? How do we feel about
it's
it?
fine. I mean, it's good. Hopefully, the car is good. I mean, it's always about, is the car going to be any good? The car is pretty good. Is it the best? Yet to come. But Lewis Hamilton is a goat. Is the goat a goat? How is that? See, I don't do this very well. The
I think
goat.
I think you would say the goat
The goat with a
because
capital
you're
T.
saying that he's the
The
greatest of all
greatest of all
time.
time. Yeah, he's got a lot of championships on it under his belt, and I'm excited to see what he does in Ferrari. But it also is like, I grew up being like, ew, that guy's wearing a Ferrari t-shirt. But am I the one that's going to be wearing a Ferrari t-shirt now? I've
You
lived
are.
long enough to see myself become the
Yes.
villain. Like, that's
Yeah.
that's where I am. Y'all, yeah, if you see me with a Ferrari t-shirt, just don't, it's not personal, okay? It's just Lewis Hamilton. Okay, that's all. That's my sports piece.
No, I follow sports. I'm not like a hardcore fan of all these. I enjoy going to the games, and I know enough about some of the players that like sometimes when I go with my wife, I'll be like, "Ooh, so and so, blah 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 blah,"
Right.
and she looks at me like I don't care.
Who?
Um, yeah, who?
Cool. Popcorn,
But
please.
I actually really like to watch women's basketball. So
Mhm.
I do like the WNBA. And I mean, it started I think because when I was in college, I really liked going to the women's basketball games. And so then like there were certain players that I followed them into their professional journey as well. So I do right now have all my hopes pinned on the Dallas Wings.
Yes.
You know, they're shaping up to be a really good team
That would be awesome.
in the new season. So yeah, Dallas Wings, go Wings. Thanks for joining us for a maybe not so fun conversation, even though we tried to make it fun. We just felt like we needed to talk about some current events and our feelings about it. But we are out of coffee, so that concludes this coffee chat. Um, Make sure you're tuning in to all of our new episodes. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media and share the show with your friends because we love growing this community and we hope to continue being a part of your coffee break.
And everyone, thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Meaghan.
I'm Maddie. Cheers,
Cheers,
queer.
queers.